and we just learned about fasting, about the laws of fasting. So let's just go over what we learned together. And that is that the Gemara here mentioned that if you're fasting, are you allowed to taste food and drink? I'm sorry, are you allowed to taste? And the Gemara said, and the question really is, you know, for a chef, for a person who's baking or cooking, they want to know, they want to taste it before they serve it. So they want to see if it needs salt, spices, and so on. So they want to taste it. So the question is, are you allowed to taste on a fast day? And the Gemara logic, it develops the question. The Gemara says, on the one hand, he accepted on himself eating and drinking, and this is not called eating or drinking. On the other hand, maybe he accepted pleasure, and this is pleasuresome. When you taste chocolate, even if you spit it out, you do get you do enjoy the taste in your mouth. So the Gemara answers that you're allowed to taste and it's not a problem. So the first question you have to ask is, what is this talking about when you're accepting on yourself? What does that mean? You accepted on yourself. Did any of you accept on yourself to fast today? Today is the fast of Esther. I didn't accept it on myself. We sort of got born into it. This is part of our tradition. We fast on the day of Purim. So So Howard wants to say we accepted the Torah and mitzvahs, and we accepted to follow what the rabbis say. That's an interesting thought. I want to hear what Yehuda, what would you like to say?
I think it's referring to a personal fast, not a community fast.
Good point. Good point. So that is the way it's explained in Tosfos on the bottom. If you want to look at the Tosfos on the bottom, Oy Dilma Hana Kibalale, or maybe he accepted on himself Hana. So Tosfos says, Hai Lishna Mashma D'Mayri B'Tainis Yachid. This is talking about an individual fast, Shekibal that he accepted on himself to fast. B'Tainis HaKosuv Loi, but it doesn't apply to a written fast. In other words, a fast that is applicable to Klal Yisrael. So that's the way Tosfos learns. Yes, Ben.
I want to say the minute you actually fast, you accepted the fast.
Okay.
You don't have to say I'm accepting my fast.
But
you
think of the logic.
Fast,
yeah, but think of the logic.
The
okay. So then so by you starting to fast, do you think that should prohibit you from do you think that would be a reason that only food, because you started fasting with only food and you didn't start? I mean, like, what does that mean? You started the fast, so why should that have any say on your pleasure or not? In other words, if the meaning is you accepted it on yourself with a certain understanding, then I could understand. But you say, oh, you started the fast, that's called accepting it. But you didn't clarify if you're accepting it with pleasure, prohibiting pleasure. You're accepting it with just food and just eating and drinking. What acceptance does that mean? When you started the fast, what do you mean by that, Ben? Because I don't know if that acceptance of starting the fast would have any say on are you allowed to benefit, or is it just eating? Or is it both? You know what I mean? The Gemara's question is you
cannot. Yeah, you don't. I don't know. I don't benefit from the fast. I just know that we need to fast because Esther fasted today.
Yeah, no. But I'm saying if you read,
then I fast and I accept it.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying use your logic and try to read the Gemara. I don't know if it flows with the way you're saying it, that it's by just starting the fast. Try to read the Gemara. It says, are you allowed to taste food? Because food and drink he accepted on himself, and this is not eating and drinking he accepted on himself, and this is not eating and drinking. Or maybe he accepted on himself pleasure. So how would that flow with, because you started the fast? I don't know if that would flow. You know, if you say you accepted, you said words that you're accepting the fast on yourself, you're going to be fasting, then I could understand it. But if you say, I started not eating, so that's called accepting it, you know what I mean? And why would that play a role either? Just because you accepted, if you accepted a community fast, would that play a role? And because you had something in mind will prohibit you from tasting or not prohibit? We're depending on the rabbis. They're the ones who are going to tell us if it's something to do with you accept it on yourself. It also doesn't sound right. So Yehuda's point, which thank you, Yehuda, that's Taisvus, that's actually a very, it fits very well with the Gemara. So that's a very good point.
Okay.
We'll have to go back to Howard in a second about maybe the acceptance of mitzvahs. But I'm going to think about that in a moment. But let me get to Robert. I saw Robert had his hand up. But we can't hear you because you're muted. Robert, you are muted.
When we say, when we agree to have a fast, it is an acceptance of abstinence. But that's the definition. And
okay, is that going to prohibit you from certain things?
No, because if you're part of a community, and a community is made up of individuals, all right? You all have a common goal, and within this context, it's a common agreement, your contract with Hashem and your community of trust, that if they're all abstaining or having a fast, for you to be honestly part of that experience, you can't cheat. And for me, if I would taste, there's stringencies within the law of that by tasting something and again, we've done this in other instances, there's nothing to guarantee that nothing is going to secrete through your mouth into your stomach, all right? And so there's never 100% that you're going to taste it and you're going to spit it out, and nothing's then going to be integrated into your body, all right? So other than for health purposes, maybe for water, because that's one of the lifebloods that we have, life fluids, you don't eat, because because you make a mockery of the whole ideal of fasting because of what its significance is relative to celebrating a holiday.
Okay, the only thing is that we're trying to understand the words of the Talmud, and you're adding a lot of interesting thoughts. You're talking about water, life that's somehow good for life.
No, I understand.
You're adding your own thoughts. Now, the problem with that is that these are good for questions. Would water be something that would be allowed on a fast? That's more of a question because, it might be people need to be hydrated. Another question that you could ask would be, would the fact that there might be a drop of the food that you're tasting you might end up actually eating, would that be an issue? For example, let's say you found a piece of corn afterward, you know that it went through your body, or something, so would that be a reason to say maybe it wasn't considered a fast because something, you ate a little or something like that, or these are good questions. But again, before we get to those questions, let's first clarify what is the Gemara's real question here. If we want to understand the laws of fasting, we have to see the words of the Gemara.
Right. What's the reference page we're on, Rabbi? What's the reference page?
We're on page 14a, and somewhere in the middle of the page, so it's probably around 14a2 or a3.
Okay, thank you.
And we're talking about, it starts with...
I hope you will upload that lesson because I have to leave in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'll try to record it. Yeah. Okay. I should mention also that tomorrow we're not going to have class because it's Purim and it's a short day and people have to have a festive meal, hear the Megillah. It's a long davening in the morning because you got to hear the Megillah. You got to have a festive meal and still have an appetite for Shabbos. So because of that, we try to eat the meal maybe before noon, And this way, you won't. We're not supposed to ruin our Shabbos meal appetite. So that's why it's customary to have the meal early. And then there's also the mitzvahs of shalach manas, or mitzvah to give at least one person shalach manas, 2 food items. And the food items in yeshiva, in school and cheder, they often used to say it has to be 2 separate brachas, but it's not true. All the Rabbanim, they all say that there's no source for such a thing, and so it could be 2 of the same brachas, just clarifying that. And it's just 2 food items, and you're fulfilling the mitzvah. There is a discussion if you give someone less than what's appropriate for them. So if you give someone who's very wealthy, you give them a candy and an orange, I don't know if you really fulfill it. But if you give a regular person, just something decent, that's that they'll enjoy, that's fine. So it's as long as it's not below someone's dignity, you fulfill the mitzvah shalach manas. That's giving two food items to a friend, to another Jewish person. It's a tradition. It's customary for a woman to give a woman, and a man to give a man, and that's shalach manas. Matanis lavyonim is to give to 2 poor people. To give money to 2 poor people. Some say it should be the value of a meal, so maybe like $3-4 or something. Maybe like I guess a bagel and a coffee. I don't know what would be considered a meal. But sandwich maybe $5-10, but you fulfill the mitzvah if you give 2 food items, two monetary gifts to 2 poor people. Yes, Susan.
How can giving food to someone be below their dignity?
Well,
that concept, it can't be.
Okay. All right. I understand. Well. If you give
if somebody rejects my orange, there's something wrong in communication.
Okay, fine. Okay. Well, there are people that have a very high standard, and to them, if you hand them, a little wafer and an orange as a gift, it's like if you give a king something that's you give him a gift of a mug. I mean, that's not, you want to give a king a gift of a silver, gold, that would be very nice. You give a king a gift of a mug, it would be below the king's dignity. And you might not be able to leave the palace if you do that. You might not be there to leave the palace. So, you have to know there are things that are below people's dignity. Yes, Ben.
You have to give them something that will show the level of appreciation that you have to them. And I have to go. Thank you and a happy holiday.
Thank you. You too. Ben. So that's the other mitzvah. So it's hearing the Megillah.
They don't know the mitzvahs,
Shalach manas. Atanis lev yoinim. In eating a festive meal on Purim, there are different opinions if it should have bread, should have meat, should have wine. So if you want to fulfill them all, you got to have 3 things in the meal.
For tomorrow, yeah.
Meat, bread, and wine. If you miss out in bread, there's opinions. If you miss out meat, maybe there's opinions. Definitely drink if you can. You're allowed to drink a little more than you used to.
Really
to drink more than you used to.
Could you mute?
Yeah.
Let me mute everyone. And I should also mention that if a person misses a word in the Megillah, they should try to catch up to where the Chazan, where the Bal Koirei is up to, and this way you will read the Megillah in order. And even though you read a few words from your own Chumash, as long as it's less than half of the Megillah, you have fulfilled your obligation. So it's very good to know. Very, very important.
Rabbi,
yes, Phyllis.
If a person is taking medication, and I'm not sure whether vitamins and minerals that are being used to support the immune system are considered in the classification of medication like an antibiotic would be. Is it allowed to do that when you're fasting without water even? Just if you're swallowing the pill?
Oh, you're allowed to swallow a pill? Of course, you have to swallow. You have to take pills when on a fast day, for sure. For sure, yeah. Obviously, you try to take it without, without water. If you could just swallow it, if you need water. I mean, depending on the situation, but for sure.
Rabbi, I think she's talking about what happens if she has to take vitamins, which are not in the classification of an antibiotic or that.
Yes,
is that allowed?
Oh, I see. Vitamins. So it's not exactly a pill. It's a.
Well, I was actually asking about both.
Oh, okay. So about vitamins,
making making a distinction.
Yeah. I would say there's a difference. Yeah, thank you, Ezra, for clarifying that. I wasn't concentrating on your exact wording. So yes, basically, pills is one thing. Medicine, antibiotics. And if you're also asking about like herbal stuff or other things like that, it would, if you could wait, it definitely, unless you feel sick, and then there might be more leniency on tinus ester. There might be leniency if a person, is feeling sick, but otherwise, and especially the other fast days, somehow tinus ester has a certain extra level of leniency. But basically, there wouldn't be a reason to take vitamins. It wouldn't be
vitamin C and vitamin B, right, and D3, things that are keeping your immune system up. That's
right.
That's not exactly. That's not the normal.
You could take vitamins.
Right. Well, that's a good question, really, especially because COVID is around.
Exactly.
I'm not so comfortable to say either way, yes or no, especially because, there is reason to be careful, and the person who's of age that could be harmful, COVID could be dangerous. So I'm going to let you ask a more rabbinic authority than myself such a question, or if you want, I can ask someone else who's a little more into giving halachic rulings. In other words, you'd want more of a rav than just. I can just tell you what Shulchan Aruch talks about. I'm not really. I don't feel comfortable applying it exactly to today to vitamins that are that are for COVID. Maybe there's more reason to be lenient. So in any event, the halachas about fasting, they do apply about tasting. They do apply nowadays a little to the question of washing out one's mouth. Are you allowed to wash out your mouth on a fast day? And now, before I get into that, I just want to mention two things. Number one is this Tosfos that says that we're talking about a individual fast, we're talking about a fast that a person accepted on themselves. That's Tosfos's view. Not necessarily is that accepted by all the commentaries. There are other views that it applies to other fasts as well. So it's possible that for other fasts as well, there would be the same question: would you be allowed to taste? The other point is that Tosfos mentioned that we're talking about that you're not really eating the food, you're spitting it out afterwards. And nevertheless, there's a question if it's allowed. And the issue, so what would be the issue really? If you're tasting and spitting out, why should it be a problem? So the answer is because you're getting enjoyment, hana. You're getting pleasure, not the pleasure of eating, but you're getting pleasure of the food in your mouth. So you're getting pleasure from that food, from the taste. Now, if we're talking about a regular fast, so the question really is that you're not allowed to eat or drink on regular fasts. So if you're just tasting, why would that be allowed to taste? And if you follow the views that argue on Tosfos, Tosfos says you're spitting it out. Let's say that you're not spitting it out. Let's say that you're actually going to swallow it. So what would be the logic of allowing you to swallow food that you're eating? It's in your mouth, you're tasting it, and you're allowed to swallow it on a fast day? How could such a thing be allowed? And it says until how much? You could even taste until a revius, which is the measurement normally that we say is prohibited biblically. That's normally the measurement of drinking is a revius. And here we're telling you you're allowed to actually have it. Again, according to the opinions that argue on Tosfos, which that you're actually swallowing it. Why would that be allowed? So the answer is that your intent plays a role here. And your intent is that you're not eating it to eat. You're not drinking it to drink. The purpose of you drinking it or eating it is in order to taste it. So because that's not your purpose, that's not your intent, there's reason to permit such a thing. Again, I don't advise it. There's definitely other opinions that prohibit it and so on. And it's not going to really help you health wise. I don't think you're getting too far if you taste something and spit it out. And nevertheless, there are such opinions. And I just wanted to bring from Shulchan Aruch, and then I'll take your question, Robert. Okay. So in Shulchan Aruch, it does bring that a person who's fasting, he's allowed to taste up to a revius, the amount of a revius, as long as he spits it out. That's what the Mechaber, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, writes. And on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, that's prohibited, to taste food and spit it out. And then the Ramah says, V'yesh machmir, and some are machmir, every tainus tzibur, that they don't taste, and even if they're going to spit it out, they don't taste. And that is the minhag. Now, then it says in Shulchan Aruch, some say that they didn't allow a revius at one shot. You would only be allowed to take sips in one fast day up to the amount of a revius of 3 ounces. So that means it's not a one shot. You can't take a sip of 3 ounces in one shot and spit it out. A whole day, you get up to 3 ounces of tasting. And some say that even one time you could do up to a revius, and then you could, of course, any throughout the day, as many times as you need to take taste the food, you would be allowed up to a revius even in one shot. So it's 2 opinions. As long as you know that you're going to be able to control yourself not to swallow any. Now, if a person normally washes their mouth out in the morning, they're not allowed to do it. It's not appropriate to do it on a fasting. But on a tainus yachid, on an individual fast, here it says it would be allowed because you're spitting it out. And even if the water has more than 3 ounces than a revius, you would be allowed on a tainus yachid, on an individual fast. There's a little more leniency, but that you would be allowed to spit it out. Now, there are other leniencies brought if a person wants to, wash out their mouth for if a person's in a lot of pain because it's their breath smells. So there are some leniencies, but a person, if they do that, the Mishnah Berurah brings down, you should bend your head forward and bent over and your mouth below so that it's impossible for you to swallow it. And he says on Yom Kippur, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. But Tisha B'Av, you could, if a person is really in pain, they would even be allowed on Tisha B'Av. And then they bring down that I guess people used to chew cinnamon and other spices and then spit it out. And that would be allowed except for Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur would not be allowed such a thing. Now, the same thing would apply to Tisha B'Av according to one opinion, and the same thing would apply to the general all fast days according to the way we explained it, that all fast days are included, and then it brings down that are you allowed to swallow your own saliva? And that, of course, is allowed. I don't encourage anyone to spit out their saliva, but it does mention it, meaning that there maybe were some people that thought you had to be machmir and more strict, but no, that's not a problem. Even Yom Kippur, you can swallow your saliva.
Oh my gosh.
So that's absolutely not a problem. But in any event, what we see here is that there are different opinions, and the opinion of being allowed to even swallow it seems to be the opinion of the Rambam, because the Rambam does say that in the Laws of Brachas, he says, matemes, no, it's not in the Rambam. Well, he talks about the Laws of Brachas. He says a person who tastes it doesn't have to make a bracha before it or after it up to a revius. And so the understanding is that that at least the Kesef Mishnah's understanding is that even if a person swallows the food, since his intent is not to benefit, it's only to taste it, he would he would not recite a bracha, and this is also mentioned in the laws in Shulchan Aruch and the Laws of Brachas. The same thing that that when a person tastes the tavshil, he doesn't have to make a bracha up to a revius, even if he swallows it. He doesn't have to recite a bracha. It's interesting in the laws of fasting that it doesn't say clearly the other opinion about